What's up guys, Readiness Reviews here with you again, and this is one of the roughest condition Milsurps I have ever purchased. However, it also happens to be the cheapest No.1 Mk.III Lee-Enfield that I've ever purchased. This is a Royal Tiger Imports C-Grade No.1 Enfield, and in today's video, we are going to be doing a deep dive on this rifle. We'll get it ready for the range, and then finally take it out and shoot it, and by the end of the video, hopefully I'll be able to answer the question of whether or not a C-Grade No.1 Enfield from Royal Tiger Imports is worth the risk. Before we get into it, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you like seeing this military surplus-centric firearms content here on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future Milsurp videos, and drop me a comment with ideas that you may have for future videos. Now let's get in deep on this RTI C-Grade. So this RTI C-Grade Enfield is a garbage rod. It is in trash condition. With that being said, I do believe this rifle can be brought back to life and restored if I invest some serious time and elbow grease. Before I commit to that though, I have to make sure this rifle is worthy of that investment. That means I need to see how it shoots. In the condition that we are currently in, I am not confident putting a round through this rifle, although I have no doubts that if you did load it and pull the trigger, it would go bang. The chamber is extremely corroded and rusty. That can cause all kinds of difficulties in loading and shooting. So if I do nothing else, the chamber must be cleaned. We're also going to do a quick basic bore cleaning just to make sure there are no obstructions. And that's about all I'm going to do before we take it to the range. For the first shots, testing the headspace with this rather bummed up bolt head would probably be a good idea. Unfortunately, I don't have an Enfield headspace gauge, so we'll be finding out how the headspace is on the range. Pop this bolt out. Whenever we're dealing with a super rusty chamber, like this rifle has, I've found the best way to deal with that is a power drill, a 20 gauge bore brush, and a piece of cleaning rod. This is going to save us a ton of time in cleaning out that chamber. Now you can use the same method to polish a chamber by using any manner of fancy polishing compound. We're just cleaning at the moment, so I'm going to use the good old trusty Hoppe's No.9 bore solvent. Get that brush good and wet. Slide our brush and drill bit into the chamber there. Start out kind of slow, giving it a spin here and there until we work our way into the chamber. Once in, I'm gonna give it a good blitz. And hopefully that took care of all the crud directly in the chamber. Get in there with our rag and wipe up some of that solvent. You can tell it is just pure rust coming out of there. It's going to basically be impossible to film, but the chamber is looking way better than it did before. Albeit far from perfect, there is still some persistent rust in there. I know I spoke about chamber polishing a moment ago. This rifle might be a good candidate for that. We won't know for sure until we see how it performs on range. It all comes down to how smoothly those rounds feed and extract. I'm going to take a couple of these Otis CLP wipes and just give everything a very quick once over. This isn't really going to do anything as far as restoration goes, but what it will do is keep me a little bit cleaner as I'm handling the rifle. There was a lot of crap in the channel that the bolt runs in. For smooth operation, we want that to be as clean as possible, and these CLP wipes do a good enough job of making that happen. Looks better than it did, but it's going to take a lot more than some CLP to take care of all that rust. Give the bolt a little cleaning while we're at it, and we'll run a cleaning rod and brush down the length of the bore to clear any obstructions that could be dangerous in shooting. Wow, look how brown that brush is. This is one rusty bore. Follow that brush up with a cloth patch. And even with as terrible as that looks, that's all we're doing before we pull the trigger on this rifle. It's been my experience that the best way to clean up an ugly bore is shooting the gun. You would be amazed how better a bore looks after sending a few rounds through it, followed up with a good bore solvent and brushing and cleaning. And that's what we'll do when we get this guy back from the range. But for now, it's time to pull the trigger. Very rarely am I nervous about pulling the trigger on a firearm for the first time, and this one has me feeling a little bit nervous today. So let's see how she sends lead. Check that out. We can't even get the bolt to close on a round. This is .303 loaded from PPU, 150 grain soft points. I've never had issues with this ammo before, and the bolt will not even close on it. So range attempt number 1 with our C-Grade here was an abysmal failure. As you guys just saw, I could not get the bolt to close on a live round. I knew the bolt head on this one looked pretty jacked up, and I'm hoping that's what the problem is. So I actually have 2 other complete number 1 rifle bolts that we're going to try. We will first give chambering around with the included bolt one more shot. So it'll shut, but it gets right about there and won't close anymore, no matter how much pressure I apply to it. There's a few things that could be wrong here. Either the headspace is super jacked up, and changing the bolt or bolt head might fix that. There could be a portion of a broken shell stuck in the chamber, or there could be something wrong dimensionally with the chamber. Someone told me that the number 1 that they received from Royal Tiger Imports had a chamber that was completely out of spec due to what they deemed an overpressure detonation. The bolt is very difficult to remove on this rifle, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the issues that we are experiencing. Usually you can very simply pop these bolt heads out by hand, but every single time that I've dealt with this rifle, I've had to use some sort of tool to assist. So I had to press our little spring here with the end of a screwdriver, and that allowed me to pop it off. And this bolt head just looks all jacked up. I knew it didn't look right when I first inspected it. So instead of going straight to putting a new bolt head on this bolt, I'm gonna see if the rifle will take a completely different bolt. This is the bolt from my B-Grade RTI No.1 Enfield, and we know that it works. All right, it popped in there easily enough, and it closes on its own, but so did that C-Grade bolt. Let's see if it'll close on around here. And it does. So let's go ahead and unload this quickly. So I guess that's what it was. That lets me know right there that the bolt was our issue, preventing it from chambering around. There is not a stuck portion of a broken case like a lot of guys suggested there might be. I thought that might have been the issue as well. I even have one other bolt. This was taken off one of those Century Arms DP rifles, but it's not actually labeled DP, so I think it's a completely functional bolt. We'll try it as well. It's a bit tough to cycle because it's really dirty, but it closes on its own, and we'll see if it closes on a cartridge or not. It does, just perfectly. Our B-Grade bolt head is on the left, our C-Grade is in the middle, and our DP rifle is on the right. And we can tell very clearly that the dimensions of that middle one do not at all look like the other two. Look at how much metal it's missing compared to the B-Grade bolt head. That's pretty ridiculous. So since we've narrowed down that the issue is the bolt, let's take this bolt head off and try to slap a fresh bolt head onto it. Well, I can already tell you that doesn't feel right. I can't finish tightening this one and it lines up correctly. I have to back it off about that much. These shouldn't be ridiculously tight. They're supposed to be able to move. There should not at all be a gap like that. We'll give this one a try regardless. So will it close on its own? Yes, it closes just fine. Will it close on a round? No, it will not. So as much as I just dog this bolt head, maybe the bolt body's the problem. I think the best course of action here is to slap this bolt from my B-Grade No.1 into our C-Grade here and get it right back out to the range. I have changed the bolt and we're back at the range to see if this thing shoots. 5 rounds of PPU, 303 here. So it has been a saga getting this C-Grade No.1 to the point where we can send rounds through it. We did finally manage to do so though, and unfortunately it would be hard for me to be more disappointed in the results. Here is our target here. These were shot at about 35 yards, and as you can see, keyhole, 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 and 4 more keyholes there. This one almost went through straight, but not quite. I think it's safe to say that she keyholes. Now, all of this shooting was done with 150 grain PPU. That particular round has performed well for me in the past. My B-Grade No.1 Enfield here was keyholing with 174 grain bullets, but when I switched to those 150 grain soft points by PPU, it was able to stabilize those projectiles. There is is a chance that a change in ammunition with the C-Grade rifle could remedy that keyholing issue. Unfortunately, the only 303 I have on hand at the moment is 150 grain, so I don't have anything else to test it against. But if I do end up putting some different ammo through this rifle and the results are different, I will report back at a later time. When we did our initial unboxing of this rifle, which I will post right here for you, we did a very simple muzzle test with our 303 ammo, and the muzzle test looked pretty positive. After shooting though, if I do that same muzzle test, it eats the bullet all the way to the casing, and that is not what you want to see. For comparison, here is my B-grade example, also from Royal Tiger Imports. And if we do that same muzzle test on this one, it stops right there. We have a distinct rim of copper showing. At the very least, on our No.1 Enfield, you want your muzzle to look like this. I attribute the difference in our muzzle test between my initial unboxing and getting it back from the range coming from cleaning. When it was pulled straight out of its box from Royal Tiger Imports, it still had all that Ethiopian gunk in it. When we cleaned the bore, it cleaned that gunk out, and so now the muzzle doesn't test as positively as it did before. With the bore being in the condition that it is, the only hope for this rifle ever being a decent shooter is to find some ammo that it likes, whether that be a different variety, a factory ammo, or even something like cast hand loads. So what's our conclusion for these $200 C-Grade No.1 Mk.III Lee-Enfields from Royal Tiger Imports? Even with as cheap as they are, and they are super cheap when you compare them to the street price for your average No.1 Enfield, they would still get a non-recommend for me for the majority of people. There are just too many variables in what can go wrong with one of these rifles. Just for me to shoot it, I had to change the bolt. That's at least a $100 investment, and it didn't come with a magazine. That's another $40 part. So if I actually had to buy those parts, it would bring the grand total on this rifle almost up to $350, and I still ended up with a rifle that keyholes every single round. So if you're okay rolling the dice on a rifle where you will most likely have a negative outcome, it might be worth going after a C-Grade for you. But for the vast majority of collectors out there, I would say stray away from the C-Grades and possibly consider a B-Grade rifle. Now you're going to have a lot of those same risks with the RTI B-Grades. The bore that you get might be trash, it might have some broken parts or whatever, but I think for the about extra $100 that you would pay for a B-Grade, you will most likely get a substantially better rifle than you would with an RTI C-Grade. With this particular C-Grade, I do still intend on restoring it so it will at least look a little nicer than it does currently, and maybe in the future we'll try some different ammunition. For now, that was our RTI C-Grade No.1 Enfield deep dive. Let me know what you thought about the video down in the comments, and do you think a Lee-Enfield in this kind of condition justifies that $200 price point? Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. That really helps it out with the Google algorithm and getting it distributed out to other viewers. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future military surplus firearms content, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you then. Peace.